Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where I've got a copy of Clans of Caledonia. The game of economic management and involving industrialization of Scotland. And we're all trying to make money by making foreign exports, specifically whiskey. So I've already unboxed my copy of Clans. But inside we've got rulebooks. We've got lots of different kinds of resources. We've got wool, milk, cheese, we've got bread, grain, whiskey, and we've got tobacco, sugarcane, and cotton, which are going to track the value of these imported goods around the board. Also in the box we've got terrain tiles for Scotland. So this is Caledonia, obviously, and we'll put these 4 tiles together to make up the map that we'll play on. It's worth noting that each tile has a little alphabetical number in the center, and those numbers have to be in alphabetical order clockwise, meaning that with these 4 tiles, there are 16 possible combinations to make a legal map for play. Here are our letters. A, B, C, D. Alphabetical in clockwise order. That seems legit. We've also got this board here. This is going to track the victory points or glory points. At the end of the game, the player with the most victory points is the winner. This tracks glory points, which are victory points you earn during the course of the game. And then at the end, during end scoring, it all just becomes victory points. So this will track your glory. It will also track the value of the 3 imported goods, which are cotton, tobacco, and sugarcane. And it's worth noting that this has so this is the 1 and 2 player side, and this is the 3 and 4 player side. And it's got a little thing down here that says don't use this if you play with 3 players. These are for contracts. More on that later. We've got an economic market. Again, this is double-sided for the 1 and 2 player and 3 and 4 player versions of the game. And this will track the value of domestic goods, which are the basic goods and the produced goods. Basic goods being wool, grain, and milk. And produced goods being bread, cheese, and whiskey. We've also got these little boards here. Now, these are simply reminders of turn order and the actions you can take on your turn. They're double-sided. One side's in English and one side's in German. On this board, you've got a reminder of the turn order, the prepare step, the action step, the income step, and the scoring step. And then we've got down here all of the actions you can take in the action step, which is why it's the same color. But don't worry, because I'll walk you through all of this when I explain how the game is played. We've got in here some more resource tokens. Now this is just, if you run out of any of the wooden pieces, you can use these. So this will qualify as 3 or 4 cheese. We've got wool and grain and all the different bits and bobs in there. We've got some docks. Now the docks are here, and these are randomized at the beginning of the game. You'll use 4 per game, and these docks are like a one-off power that you can use if you reach them. For example, when you reach this dock, it will give you 3 glory points. Glory looks like this in the tartan symbol per upgrade you've done on your player board. You can tell these upgrades because of this pen symbol. And you can choose any 4 of these randomly at the start of the game to put out on the board, and I'll show you where those go. But there are 5 left over, and the 5 that are left over can actually be flipped over to their industrial complex side to use in a game variant. We've got money in 3 denominations, 1s, 5s, and for the very wealthy, we've got 10s. Yes, all the money. I've also got here 4 player boards. These player boards are used to keep track of what you've built and what you've got left to build. They're used for calculating income and keeping track of the upgrades you've done over the course of the game as well. These player boards are not specific to any player color, so that you can give any one player one of these boards. And also on the back, what you've got is sort of like a handy cheat sheet of all the things that might happen in the game and what different points are worth and all that kind of stuff for 2 and 4 players or 3 players, as well as some stuff for the solo mode. Speaking of player boards, we've got 4 player colors, and I've put together these player baggies, and I'll show you what I've put in them. But we've got a red player, a blue player, we've got our white player, and a black player. We've also got export and import contracts. These contracts are a hugely important part of the game. And they've got two sides on each of them. One side has the domestic good that you will export. So you can see this contract is 4 bread. And it will get you 4 tobacco, 5 gold, and 1 hops. And here we've got all the different clans. And each of the clans has their own special ability. And those special abilities all have different powers. These are starting resource tiles. These will tell you how many resources you get at the start of the game. So for example, this one tells you you get wool, cheese, and 60 gold coins. And this one you can see has cheese, milk, wool, and 55 gold coins. We've got some dice here. The dice are only used in the solo variant of the game, which I am not going to cover in this video. But if you'd like to see a video where I talk about the solo version of the game, I'm happy to make one. So let me know in the comments below. We have here random victory point tiles. Each of these tiles are worth... Each of these tiles provide different sort of victory point conditions, and you'll get glory when you manage to doing different things. There'll be 5 of these used in the game, 1 for each round, and they'll be flipped over to mark the end of the round. And we can see here, for example, this one will give you 2 glory points for each of the worker meeples you've placed on the board. This one will give you a glory point for each upgrade you've done, and this one will give you 2 glory points for each beef or mutton you have on your completed export contracts. And these will all give you different sort of conditions and sort of further randomizing over the course of the game. And you can see here that they'll be placed along the side of this board like this. We've got these glory point tokens, and these are 30 and 60 double-sided, and they will just, therefore, if you make it all the way around the victory point tracker and come off the outside, then you can take one of those and start again at the top. We've got little transparent pieces of plastic, and these are actually really pleasing. I really like these. I probably shouldn't like them as much as I do, but I really like them. And they go here on the market board to track the value of goods on the market board. See if bread goes up in price, we can move this one up. And if it goes down in price, we can move it down. Oh no, bread is super cheap. And then we've got the player baggies. Whoa, loads of stuff in the player baggies. So in each player bag, I've got 8 meeples, I've got 4 miners and 4 woodcutters, I've got 4 barrels of whiskey, I've got 4 bushels of grain, 4 loaves of bread, 4 pieces of cheese, 4 cows, 4 sheep. I've got 7 merchants, 5 of which go here on the merchant track and 2 are for the player to begin with. We've got 1 ship's wheel, which will track players' shipping technology. Starts here on the leftmost space. And then we've got a wood upgrade here, an upgrade tile for the woodcutters. We've got an upgrade tile for the miners right here. We've also got an export contract container. Bearing in mind this has both a 3 and 4 player side as well as a 1 and 2 player side. And that will basically show the different victory conditions in both of those game modes. We've also got 4 dock tokens. Now the docks will be laid out on the board later on in the corners, and they will provide you with different bonuses. They'll be sort of out like this, and when you use one of those bonuses, you might put your dock token down on it to indicate that you've used it and cannot take that action again. 4 of those for 4 docks. We've also got this, which is a settlement tracker. More on that later, but to be honest, it's totally inessential. We didn't use ours, but you know, you might find that useful, so I'll explain what it does later. This is a glory point tracker. This goes on the outside of the board we looked at earlier. This board right here. This will just track your glory points around the outside of this board. We've also got this, which is your turn order tracker. That will go down here and track your turn order as the turn order is variable over the course of the game. So I've made 4 identical bags with all those contents in it. So now I'm going to set up a 3-player game. So note that most of the variations between setting up the 3-player and the 4-player, well, there's actually no difference in setting up a 3 and 4-player game other than the amount of player boards you have to set up. The only difference between setting up a 3 and 4-player game and a 1 and 2-player game is by and large, what sides most things have to be on. Again, I'm not going to talk about the one-player game. The two-player game, it's just making sure that all the boards are on the right side for the one- and two-player side. But you'll also, you might be able to notice, I don't know if you can see it on the table camera, but I'll show you in a bit more detail in a minute. But the outside rows of all of these boards, the border is shaded slightly darker than the interior of the board. And what that's saying is that the outermost hexes on every side of the board are not used in the one- and two-player game. So you cannot build there in those game modes. Okay, so everybody's got their player boards set up. Red player, blue player, black player. We're not using white player in this demonstration because he's the color of milk. We've got the starting indicators on our marketplace board set up. There's a spare player board here just acting as a reference sheet. Everybody's got a player reference sheet. So now we can set up some of these random victory point tiles. There are 5 rounds in the game, and the rounds are indicated here. And each space will have one of these shields randomly allocated to it. So for space number 1, we're going to have, you'll gain 1 glory for each basic good in your stock. That's the basic goods that you have at the end of the round. So bear in mind, because scoring happens after income, this will include stuff that you just made in the income phase. How about this one for round 2? This is going to give you 2 glory points for every worker you've got on the board. That's a worker that's come off the miner or woodcutter track on your player board. How about this one? This one gives you 1 glory point for each cotton, tobacco, or sugarcane on your fulfilled export contracts. That makes some of the export contracts worth loads of points. For example, if you'd completed this one, that would get you 4 victory points for the 4 cotton on it. For turn 4, we've got this one, which gives you a glory point for every upgrade you have, and that's each step of the upgrade. So, for example, if you've upgraded shipping 3 times, get 3 glory points. This one gives you 1 glory point for each of the buildings you've built that produce goods. So, for example, for each of your deployed sheep, cows, bakeries, distilleries, dairies, did I say dairies? For each one of those you've put down on the field, gain a glory point. Note that these are based on produce, which means that grain fields which produce 2 grain every income phase are actually worth 2 glory points. So there, now we've set up that. While we're here on the export board, let's set out our exports. We must take our exports and shuffle them into a random stack. And then once the random stack is assembled, this will be drawn from over the course of the game, but we will use it to randomly set out a bunch of starting export contracts. Now, we won't cover up this last place because we're setting up a 3-player game and you don't use this in a 3-player game. If it was a 4-player game, we'd put out 1 more. We've also got our imported goods up here, ready to track the imported goods around the outside. But let's get our players to put their glory trackers up there as well. Ready to go the minute someone earns a glory point. Finally, we've got our random turn order tracker down here. So let's randomly determine turn order. Who should go first? Boop, it's red, and then blue, and then black. So red will go down here, black will go down here, and blue will go down here. So now that's determined, we're going to determine clans and starting goods. So we'll take the clans, we will mix them up, and we'll deal out a number of clans randomly based on the number of players plus 1. So here I've got Clan Campbell, Clan Robertson, Clan Buchanan, Clan Ferguson. The rest of those go away forever. Now, I'm also going to randomly distribute these starting resource tiles onto the clans at this point. Clan Campbell starts with those goods, Clan Buchanan with those, Clan Robertson with these ones, and Clan Ferguson with those ones. So here are our 4 clans with their starting goods set up. Now, in the official sort of setup, it is the last player gets to choose first, then the second player, and finally the first player will choose their clan last. There is a variant where the clans don't have any clan powers, so none of this matters, and another variant where you can bid on the clans in order to determine who gets which one they want, and that's recommended sort of for more experienced players of the game anyway. So we've got blue player going last, so blue player chooses Clan Buchanan, then the black player who's going second chooses Clan Ferguson, and finally the red player who's going first will choose Clan Robertson. That's all good. And Clan Campbell can go back in the box because he didn't make it. Everybody should be distributed their starting goods. For example, Clan Buchanan, here you go, buddy. 60 gold, a wool, and a grain. You're ready to go into the world, my friend, to make your fortune. Our clans are ready to put their meeples out on the board, but first let's distribute some random docks. So we'll put all the docks face down. And then I will distribute one randomly to each dock area. Now you'll notice in each corner of the map are two ships that look like this. And these ships, there are two of them because one is used in the 1 and 2 player mode, and the other is used for the 3 and 4 player mode. So I'll be using the 3 and 4 player mode, and I'll flip over this dock and place it there. If this was the 1 and 2 player mode, the dock would be here. And I'll do this one for each corner of the game. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a variant where you take 4 of these, and then you can place them on the board in the different board sections to block off spaces, and this is designed to increase sort of player interaction as they can't build there. But that's a game variant, and we won't be setting that up for this instructional video. So now, beginning with the first player, who is red, the first player takes one of their meeples from their player board, either a woodsman or a miner, and places it on the game board. Now you'll see all these different kinds of lands on the game board here. We've got lochs, we've got rivers, we've got mountains, forests, and fields. And it's important because woodsmen must go in the forests. In this case, this space here is entirely forest, so our woodsman can go there. Our woodsman can also go in this tile because it is a field, a forest, and a mountain tile. It has all 3 attribute types. He can also go here because that's a field and a forest as well. If he was one of our mountain miners, he would go here, he could go here. Once again, he could go here or here. So we know from our player board that placing a woodsman costs 6 gold, as it reads here. Conveniently, you'll see that the gold values are sometimes in red and black, and that means the red indicates that it is a price I have to pay, whereas the black indicates that it is income. So we can see that the map, every tile also has a price in red. This is the price I have to pay to place anything in that space. So if I were to place my woodsman, who costs 6, in these woods here, that has a cost of 1. I'd pay a total of 7 to put him down there. But this tile, which is better because it's got all 3 terrain types in it, costs 6 to play in. So I would have to pay 12 to put him down here. 12 luscious pounds. So the red player decides to put down his woodcutter in the forest here. He must pay 7 for that, and he pays the full price during setup as well as over the course of the game. So £7 back to the bank from red player. Then it's blue player. Blue player can play either a miner or a woodcutter. Note that you can only place the workers during this deployment step of the setup. And that's 7. That's 11 to go there because this is a miner. Miners are more expensive to place than woodsmen. And then black player would play, and then turn order alternates. So black player plays again. And then blue player plays. And finally red player plays again. Apparently red player is the antisocial player of this gaming group. So with our docks set up, we've got our board set up here and our player order established with our victory points and our export contracts. We've got red player set up, blue player set up, and black player set up. It looks like we're ready to begin playing the game. So there are 5 rounds over the course of the game, and each round is split up into 4 phases. The 4 phases shown here on the player card: preparation, actions, income, and scoring. So let's look first at preparation. For the preparation on the first turn of the game, you will have to do absolutely nothing. So actually, let's look straight at the action phase, which is the second phase of the game and the most important one. And this phase in which basically everything takes place. I'll cover preparation step at the end of the demonstration after scoring. So the main body of the game takes place here in the action phase, and in the action phase, it says actions 1 to 7 may be used multiple times per round, but only once per turn. So What that essentially means is each person will take turns taking one of these actions and will go round and round the table, and you can trade multiple times. You can obtain one export contract multiple times, but you just do one thing. So for example, I might take a trade action, blue player could expand, black player could upgrade, then it comes back to me, I could trade again, or I could expand, or do whatever I want, and we will continue to alternate taking different actions, going round and round the table, until everybody has taken the pass action. Once someone takes the pass action, then they are out of the running, and the remaining players can continue to take actions until all players have passed. So let's have a look at some of the actions that you can take. So the first action a player can take on the list of actions to take is trade. And trade, in order to look at trading, we'll have to go over to our merchant board. So here we have the merchant board. You've got sale and purchase. If you sell things, you gain money, which is why it's a black plus. And if you buy things, you lose money. You pay for them. That's why it's a negative minus. Now, you will remember you start the game with 2 merchants and may purchase more over the course of the game. And these merchants are used to buy goods. You can put them down here and buy 2 cheese. Or you can put 1 here and buy cheese and 1 here and buy whiskey. It's worth noting when you take the trade action, you can put down as many merchants as you want, but only on the column of 1 good. So for example, if a red player had 4 merchants available, he could put all 4 on milk, but he would only be able to put merchants in the milk column on this trade action. It's also worth noting, if you buy milk during 1 round, you cannot sell milk during the same action phase. It says in the rulebook, high-speed trading was not common in 19th century Scotland. So, you can either buy or sell, but not both. If you purchase a good, then you put 2 of your meeples down on that good. You take 2 milk from the bank and pay the price, in this case 10. And then when you're done, the price inflates by 2, because there is less goods available in the market now because you just bought them. Alternatively, if you sell goods, then you gain money equal to twice this amount because we're selling 2 milk. First of all, I have to take the 2 milk from my stock and return them to the bank. Obviously, I can't do this if I don't have the milk to do it with. Then I gain £10 and price decreases by 2. Don't worry about these 2 icons here. We'll talk more about those later. Those are neighboring bonuses. The next action is called Obtain 1 Export Contract. And it says, pay required cost and place the chosen contract on your empty export box. For this, we'll have to go over to the other board. So here we've got our marketplace of export contracts. We can purchase any one of these. We can have only one at a time, and we cannot replace it until we complete it. So make sure you pick a good one and one that you have some hope of completing. Furthermore, the price of these varies. On the first round, you can see a 5 here in black. That means you actually get paid £5 for taking one. That's great. However, in round 2, it's £0, so you won't get paid at all. That sucks. And from round 3 onwards, it costs you money to take them. So this one costs £5 per contract taken in round 3, £10 per contract taken in round 4, and £15 per contract taken in round 5. So let's have a quick look. This one here shows us that we must pay a bread and a whiskey to complete it. And if we do that, we gain £15 and 8 hops. Hops are not a resource that you will collect in the game, but instead at the end of the game you'll gain 1 victory point for every hop that you have on your completed export contracts. This is indicated here, 1 hop for 1 victory point. Here we're going to trade 2 mutton for 2 tobacco, 1 free placement or free expansion, and 1 hops. Free expansion allows us to build on tiles. You remember when we were placing our meeples down earlier? For example, when blue player placed his meeple here, he had to pay £2 for this space. A free expansion allows you to take an expansion action, taking something from your player board and putting it down on the map without paying the cost on the tile. However, you still have to pay for the thing you put down. In this case, a woodsman would have cost 6 instead of 8. You might also be wondering, what the hell is mutton? I didn't see that anywhere. Well, mutton is in fact sheep that must be removed from the board. So if you've built sheep in order to attain wool over the course of the game, in order to pay the mutton cost, you must remove 2 sheep from the board and return them to your player board. Which means that unless you can put these sheep back out on the board, you won't be getting the wool from them in the income step. Something to consider. The third action you can take is called expand, and this involves taking thingies off your player board and putting them onto the land. So here on our player board, we've got our meeples that we were placing earlier. We've got our distilleries, our fields. We've got our bakeries, our dairies, our cows, and our sheep. And we'll want to get these out on the board because every time we get them out on the board, we reveal these little icons underneath. For example, here on the wheat field, we revealed 2 wheats with little pluses. And what this indicates is that in the income step, we're going to gain 2 wheats. If we take away this whiskey barrel, we'll gain whiskey. However, because whiskey is a produced good, you'll notice this little arrow here. More on that in the income step, but essentially you can't get whiskey without grain. Similarly, you can't make cheese without cows for milk. You'll see above the sheep and the cow here, you've got your mutton and beef icons. These reference those export contracts, and remember when we're killing our sheep for mutton, that's what this indicates. Finally, we've got over here some little icons for our meeples, and these little icons for the meeples indicate that you gain pounds for having meeples out on the board. Now, the right column with the higher value is for upgraded meeples. We'll look at that, what that means in the upgrade step. But unless you've done any upgrading, you're taking from the left column. So having 1 miner gets you 6 gold, and 1 woodsman gets you 1 miner gets you 6 pounds, and 1 woodsman gets you 4 pounds, for a total of 10 pounds in the income step. If you build more, you get more. Notice that there's a little sum icon here. That means this replaces the previous value. So if you have 2 miners out, you get 12 pounds, and 2 woodsmen get you 8 pounds, for a total of 20 pounds. These are not cumulative. These are the updated values. So if you build all your miners, for example, you'll get a grand total of 24 pounds. That's pretty good. 32 if you upgrade your mining. When placing a unit on the board, you have to consider the land type. Now remember, our miners must go on mountains. Our woodcutters must go on forests like we looked at earlier. Everything else, which means this grain field, for example, or this sheep, or this cow, or this dairy, or this loaf of bread in the bakery, or this whiskey distillery, can only go on plain fields and nothing else. So don't put them in the mountains, don't put them in the forest. So if we're going to place our grain field down, we have to place that in a field. So at this stage, we have no technological upgrades, which means we can only play in neighboring hexes. Neighboring hexes means hexes that neighbor our existing buildings. So I could put this grain field down as the blue player here, because this has all terrain types in it, here because it's plains. I could also go here, because this is plains and forest. Same here, more plains here, and mountain and plains here. So all 4 of those tiles. I can't go here, because I haven't researched shipping, and I can't get across the river. But more on that when we get to upgrades. So I'll put this down here. It costs 18 to build a grain field, plus 3 for the space. That gives me 21. Now let's say black had already built a dairy here when I put down my grain field. That means I now gain a neighboring bonus from the proximity of the dairy. What does that mean? Well, it means I can now, for a reduced price, acquire cheese. Let's have a look at the trade board. So because blue player has built his grain field next to black player's dairy, he can take a trade action in order to buy cheese. And it must be cheese because of the dairy. And in this case, he can buy as much cheese as he has merchants available, except up to 3. That's why there's a 3 here. It must be 3. And this little icon up here indicates the neighboring bonus. And we can see at the bottom here a -3, which means I'm purchasing at a -3 cost. So I can buy up to 3 cheese. So if I'm the blue player and I have 3 merchants available, I might put them all down here and gain 3 cheese at 7 each, which is 10 minus the 3. For the discount, so I would pay a grand total of 21, and then this would go up to 13. Now, you'll notice that, that it's slightly different for basic goods here. If it is a basic good, the price reduction is -2 rather than 3, so slightly less off for basic goods. Otherwise, it works exactly the same way. The next action on our chart here is upgrade shipping. That means we pay 4 and increase our shipping by 1. This is fairly self-explanatory. If we look at the shipping track on our player board here, we can see we start with 0 shipping. There's a price up here of 4 pounds, so we can pay 4 pounds and just move our shipping wheel along the track. This first step means that we can now build across rivers and reach across rivers. The next step allows us to pass through 1 space of lock, 2 spaces, and all the way up to 4 spaces of lock, noting that we can always still pass the rivers. Red player has upgraded his shipping to 1, which means he can now put a sheep in this field. He can cross this river. Blue player has upgraded his shipping to level 2, which means that he can place a sheep over here on the other side of this lock because he can cross 1 lock space. Later on, he could place another sheep here because he retains shipping level 1, which gives him the ability to cross this river. However, he's now murdered both these sheep for mutton and frees up these spaces for red to expand again. Our next step is upgrade technology. Pay 10 and flip a tile. Remember this rightmost column I was telling you about? Well, if you want to access those increased income funds, which of course you do, you'll need to upgrade your tools. You can upgrade your woodcutters and your miners by flipping over these tiles for £10. And if you flip over the tile, you'll see that's gone to 6 plus income, which just means take from the right column. Similarly, you can do the same here, upgrading the miners to the use of dynamite, which is great. And then you can take from the right column instead of the left column. Remember, they're still cumulative. You can only upgrade each of these once. There's also a reduced cost of 5 here, and that's actually an export bonus. If you complete this export contract, this gives you free upgrade options. You can have 3 different free upgrade options with this. You can upgrade your miners or woodcutters at a reduced cost of £5. You can upgrade your shipping 1 step for free. And you can acquire a merchant for free as well. So you could pick to do any 2 things with this option if you completed this contract. You could upgrade both your woodcutters and your miners, take 2 merchants, or indeed even upgrade your shipping twice. There's actually a 4th thing you can do, which is that you can take a merchant back from the merchant board. This is the only way in the game to buy and sell in the same round. Blue player places 2 merchants down here and buys 2 cheese for £20. Cheese then increases to £12 in cost. Later, blue player completes this foreign contract, export contract, giving him 2 upgrades. Those 2 upgrade choices can in fact be to return these merchants from the trade board to his player board. This means that on his next turn, he could put them down here and sell those cheese back to the trade for 24, earning him a grand total of £4 profit, which hardly seems worth it when you think about the power of this option. Speaking of merchants, our next option is to hire a merchant. Hiring a merchant is very simple. You pay £4 and you acquire a merchant from the leftmost space of your board and add it to your pool of merchants. You can use that merchant immediately in your next action as soon as you're allowed to take a trade action again. You can continue to buy merchants. You can continue to buy merchants until you have none left, but you can only buy 1 merchant every time you take this action. The next action on the player board is Fulfill Export Contract. Now, red player has decided it's time for him to fulfill this contract. So he chooses to complete an export contract. He takes the goods from his stock and pays them. They return to the supply. He then completes the contract. So he can just put it here. Bear in mind that there's no hidden information in this game that's stipulated in the rules, so there's no point in turning it face down or anything like that. You just leave it up to make sure everybody knows what you've got. And in this case, 2 sugarcane, £3 and 4 hops. Note that he will take the £3 from the bank and add them to his personal supply. Great. The sugarcane and hops are not something he physically receives, but will provide victory points at the end. But whenever an export good like sugarcane, tobacco, or cotton is received, then we increase the tracker around the player board. So the red player just received 2 sugarcane, so we take the sugarcane marker here and we move it up to space 2 on this board. At the end of the game, these special goods will be worth victory points equal to their rarity, with the rarest ones being worth the most. So for example, if we wind up with a board like this, at the end of the game, tobacco will be worth 5 victory points each, and cotton will be worth 4 victory points each, and sugarcane 3 victory points each as the most common exported good. And it's also worth noting that the denominations of 5 around this board have a pound on them. If you are the one who completes a contract that tips a good onto or over this space, then you gain £1 in addition to anything else you get on that contract, which is great. But it does say in the rules that you have to remember to take this pound, and if you forget, you can't have it, which seems a little unnecessarily harsh to me, but there you go. The final action on the board here is to pass. Red player has run out of actions to take and he wants to pass. When he passes, he just drops down into this bottom column here, into the first available space. In this case, it's the number 1 slot, and he gains £16. If blue were to pass next, he would drop here into the second player spot, gaining 14 pounds. And then the black player would go into the last spot and gain 12 pounds. The round numbers are here, and these round numbers just indicate which row you should be in based on which round it is. So now all of our players have passed, and we've established the turn order for the next round. It's time to work out the income step. So here's blue player's board, and in somewhat of an uncanny fashion, he's built one of everything on the first round. So it's time for income, and he's going to gain... Well, first we'll check, we'll see. Apparently he's upgraded both of his things, so he'll be taking from the right column here, which means he'll gain 6 pounds and 8 pounds for a total of 14 pounds. So he'll gain 14 pounds of income here. Next, he'll gain basic goods, which includes wool, milk, and grain. A wool, a milk, and 2 grain. And then it's time to gain advanced goods. Now, in this case, blue player has the option of gaining a bread, a cheese, and a whiskey, because he's got one of each symbol uncovered. But he will have to pay for those. Remember, they are advanced goods. You'll see here little arrows indicating that. So there's the arrow that means milk becomes cheese. And here next to the grain field, we've got little arrows to indicate that grain becomes bread and grain becomes whiskey as well. So in this case, he actually pays his milk and both of his grain here to achieve a whiskey, a bread, and a cheese. It's worth noting that if he had milk left over from the previous turn, he could have paid the milk he had left over for another cheese at this stage if he had enough dairies uncovered. So it doesn't matter where the good comes from to pay for the produced good. It can come from your existing stock or the stock you've just acquired, provided that you have enough of the requisite buildings uncovered in order to produce the advanced good. Next up, we've got scoring, where we score these tiles. In this case, everybody's going to get a glory point for every basic good they have in their stock. So in this case, we'll have a look at the blue player, who only has 2 wool because he turned everything into produced goods. So he will gain 2 glory points, putting him up to here on the tracker. So then it's the cleanup step. In the cleanup step, we're going to do 3 things. We're going to flip the victory point condition that we just scored to indicate the round is over. We're going to replenish the export contracts, and we're going to recover our merchants from the trade board. So we're going to flip that. It's now time for round 2. We're going to replenish our export contracts at random from the pile. And finally, all of the players are going to grab their merchants back from this trade board here and return them to their supply. And the game will continue in this fashion, with every player taking turns taking actions until all 5 rounds are gone, and then we will progress to final scoring. Once all 5 rounds are depleted, it's time for final scoring, and we've got here a handy little booklet that will help you to do final scoring. You can write all your players' names along the top here, and this just indicates glory. This is all of the glory points you racked up from the scoring tiles during the course of the game. This is basic goods. You get 1 point for each basic good in your stock. Then we've got produced goods. You gain 2 points for each produced good in your stock. Then you've got pounds, 1 point for every 10 pounds you have left. Hops, 1 point for every hops you've got left. Exported goods. As I indicated earlier during the export contract, this is the number of export goods you've acquired on each of your contracts. For example, 2 tobacco times their rarity. So in this case, tobacco, if it was the most rare, would get you 10, and if it was the most common, would get you 6. So then you've got points for the max number of completed export contracts. This is actually indicated on your export contracts board here. So the player with the most gets 12, the player with the second most gets 6, and the player with the least gets 0. And then you've got max settlements. Well, what the hell is a settlement, and why haven't we talked about it? Well, that's a very good question, and it only comes up in endgame scoring. So make sure you mention it to people before you play that settlements are a thing. So any cluster of buildings that is directly adjacent to itself is a settlement. So for example, this is a grain and woodsman settlement. Here we've got a dairy and woodsman settlement. Now, if I were to put down, say, a sheep over here, this would be 2 settlements, because the sheep and the woodsman are not directly adjacent. The settlements are broken by this river. Of course, in order to put that sheep down, I would need to have researched level 1 in the shipping upgrade track. So at the end of the game, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look and see who's got the most settlements. So let me put out an example. So somehow, perhaps through the murdering of livestock or other means of expansion, this has happened. Now, in this case, the black player has got shipping level 1, which means they can only cross rivers, and the blue player has shipping level 2, which means they can cross rivers and also 1 space of lock. So in this case, the black player has 2 settlements. He's got one here, which is his dairy and woodcutter, and he's got one here, which is his cow. He cannot add the sheep to the settlement because he does not have shipping. If he upgraded to shipping level 2, he would gain 1 lock worth of shipping, which would mean the sheep would count as part of this settlement. No matter how much shipping he upgrades, however, he will never get this woodsman over here as a new settlement unless he can somehow build his way over to the river. There are times during the game when killing livestock might be of benefit to you. For example, if our black player has level 2 shipping, he can cross this section of lock. If he murders this cow for beef, then he can actually count as having 2 settlements rather than 1. These little doodads from everyone's player bags are actually supposed to be for tracking settlements, although we never used them and found them kind of a pain in the ass. But you can put them down here, and if you have, let's say, 4 settlements, you can put it up there to indicate how many settlements you have. Remember, the premise is that there's no hidden information in this game, so if someone were to ask you how many settlements you have, you would have to admit it anyway. So don't forget that your settlements are listed here on your export box here. 18 points for the most connected settlements, 12 for the second most connected settlements, and 6 for the least connected settlements. Well, actually, there's a 4th spot over here for our 4th player, who would get nothing at all in a 4-player game. So once you're done totaling up all of that, the player with the most victory points wins. Of course, if you have any leftover money, that's money that wasn't put away in the denominations of 10 to be scored earlier, so your change, that is the tiebreaker. And if you have a tie on that as well, then I guess you can revel in your shared victory, or you can play again to determine the winner of Clans of Caledonia. So I hope that's helped to instruct you how to play. We'll be playing tomorrow. I'll be joined by my friends Chris and Michael, and we'll all be taking on different clans in Caledonia to see who can be the most successful whiskey merchant. So see you all tomorrow, and thanks for watching.